You are, by
Mm.
any definition, a very, very successful actor. And as I've said freely, I love the roles that you play and the way you play them. And you've been ensconced in the acting community all your life. Your family, of course, that was the case. The creative community seems to pride itself on its experimentalism and its commitment to non-conformity to what they might call as mainstream and bourgeoisie values. But ideologically, it itself seems to be utterly uniformitarian and even boringly predictable. Why is it that a community that likes to be known for its bohemianism and experimentalism so ideologically uniformitarian?
I think a large part of it, sadly, is fear. Fear of most people in show business are self-employed, and so they worry about where their next paycheck is coming from. And therefore, just following on from my experience with Equity, the Actors Union, who called for me to be denounced, they are terrified, I think, of losing their profession. So what one does in that situation is one changes one's ideological outlook to suit the most likely chance of being employed. And that in itself creates very monochrome, monoculture drama. And we are missing the days of the David Leans and the great Robert Bolts and people who were truly trying to make films that they would want to watch and write films that they would be excited to listen to. And now we seem to make most things based around the HR policies of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And, that's fine, except that the only thing that we're not including is a diversity of thought and opinion. So I find films very flat, a lot of modern films. And I'm a member of BAFTA, even though they have swallowed the Kool-Aid when it comes to critical race theory as well. And they send out their films every year. And I struggled to find one that I really, really enjoyed last year from the 100 or so that they sent out.
Yeah, I can understand that. I must say, I find it very interesting in Australia that if you want ratings, you go to the older. This is really quite extraordinary, even the commercial networks in Australia. If you want a viewing audience on free-to-air television, you go back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s BBC dramas and comedies and whodunits. Most of the modern stuff just doesn't seem to capture people, which I think is quite interesting in itself.
Certainly, it's not challenging the culture; it's propping the culture up. And I think it's not countercultural. I think it's wonderful when films go against the things that make one feel safe in one's culture. But also, if you're propping up something so empty, which is what this postmodern woke world is, then the drama that's going to support it is going to be not that fascinating, I would imagine. Certainly not to me.
Laurence, would you say that there's actually a conscious desire among producers and writers and directors and artists, perhaps, dare I say it, even at the BBC, to get ideological messages into art and entertainment in order to shape the minds of the public?
Certainly. And without any question, the BBC I find, shameful in the way that they are ignoring their charter, both in drama and in news. So it's the thing that also worries is the fact that I don't think they're even aware of it. I think they're all so of the same mindset that they're not aware of the bias that they're throwing into their even children's programs like Doctor Who have lost huge amounts of ratings as they try and make that politically correct. And it was essentially a very interesting show back in the day, but the BBC drama now is almost unwatchable, and the news is being editorialized. We're having the introductions by Emily Maitlis, who presents Newsnight. She's doing Fox News style introductions, but excuse me, from very much from the left, and that's absolutely against the charter of the BBC. So I think the BBC's reputation is taking a big hit. But having started to criticise it, which I have done, and there is another organisation run called Defund the BBC in the UK. The BBC, Boris Johnson started making noises about putting in Paul Dacre possibly to run it, and new chairman, but I'm not sure it's salvageable. I think they've lost the public trust. They're the CNN of the UK.
We've almost reached the point where, as a very senior newspaper man said to me the other day in Australia, you simply have to accept the reality and profile the politics of every news source that you take on board, including the publicly funded ones, and then try and if you like, set yourself a series of sources of information and try and discern the truth from the fake news amongst it, which I find appalling. The whole purpose of having publicly funded broadcasters is that you feel that they will be objective. And I find, quite frankly, in Australia, I think the most powerful way to put it is that I don't think I should really know the ABC's position on anything. In fact, I feel I know its position on virtually everything. And the BBC seems to be much the same.
Absolutely. It's very predictable. And if anything, the BBC is something that does slightly wrap a gentle blanket around our culture and should, push us in the right direction. But at the moment, it seems to, as one BBC journalist who I spoke to the other day, said, that the lunatics are in charge of the asylum over there. So they will walk around and say, this is how I'm going to present my show. And if questioned, they will essentially make threats against the management. This is what I'm told by someone quite senior in the BBC. So yes, once you know the BBC's position on one thing, as is often the case with these very progressive people, you also know their position on almost everything else. In fact, you could tell them to be quiet and tell them their position and they'd probably agree with you. It's that predictable.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the issue of diversity. You've made the comment, I think, that the British heritage, real British heritage, embodies what you call true diversity. Can I ask what you mean by true diversity and what you would describe as false diversity and where you might find that false diversity?
I think, yes, I think it's good. True diversity it's about viewpoint, isn't it? It's about opinion, and false diversity is about obsession with immutable characteristics. That's the simplest way I can define it. And therefore we get to the point, certainly here in the UK, I don't know how it is in Australia, where if you don't have the right opinion, but you happen to be non-white skinned or you're black skinned and you have the wrong opinion, you're no longer black. In the same way as a friend of mine who I did a video with the other day talking about critical race theory, someone responded by saying that he should have the black beaten back into him. So that's false diversity. And true diversity is to take what Martin Luther King said. I know it's becoming a tired old trope now, but I think the content of character over colour of skin is very important, and the BBC certainly have spent huge amounts of time working on their diversity, inclusion and equality policy, but just they missed out the thought part of it and opinion. So yes, in simplest terms, true diversity is diversity of opinion, and false diversity is diversity of characteristic, physical or otherwise.
Thank you for watching this episode. We appreciate your support. If you value vital conversations like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel there and also click the notification bell to stay up to date with new releases.